Talk Eve to me.
Oh man, yeah. I finished writing that story. I think it will go up tomorrow. I've been spending most of last week researching. I'm sure some of you guys saw the headlines.
I felt the world
battle.
like shiver or quake or something, but like I wasn't quite sure what it was because I'm not like attuned to the.
Something like $300,000 of actual currency were destroyed.
I watched a stream for like 4 hours and I had no idea what was going on, but there were a lot of numbers.
Max just like turned and looked at me. It felt like a disturbance or something. Like only something babies and dogs could sense was happening.
Scandinavia sank 3 inches.
What happened?
The story starts basically with an unpaid bill. So one of the big things that happens in EVE Online is it's called Sov War. So it's basically, different coalitions fighting over territories. And when you have territories, you can use that to build war assets and things like that. Now, in the future of EVE Online, for whatever reason, they don't have auto bill pay. It's something that you manually have to do. You can set up certain systems so that they do get automatically paid, but you have to manually go and set that stuff up every month. And anyway, basically, a bill didn't get paid, and then this SOV, this one section of space, became open. Now, normally that wouldn't be a big deal. Except that if we were to think about this in real life terms, it's essentially like if the U.S. suddenly stopped defending Washington, D.C.
It's like when Microsoft didn't pay Hotmail's domain registration.
Yes.
It was up for grabs.
Yeah.
And this was in the middle of this big stalemate between this one group called the CFC, which is largely the Goon Swarm Alliance, which they come out of something awful. And that has this guy named Matani, who is sort of this infamous guy.
I am the Black Knight.
If you remember a couple years ago, there was a guy that got really drunk, said some stupid things, and got banned out of the game. That's that guy, and he heads up CFC / the Goon Swarm. And this other group that they had been fighting against, called N3, it's like part of 3 Ns. They had been fighting, but basically in EVE Online, when you do Sov War, if you have enough ships, you can basically have your healers repair the tanks, to use RPG terms, and it's just a stalemate. And then you're just waiting for someone to screw up. And the screw up was this base, which essentially was the capital of one of these sides, becoming exposed. And so that side then had to send in significant war assets in order to protect it. Now, the reason they had to do that was because the moment it becomes available, because they didn't pay their bill, you have to set up an item that gains you access to that area and protect it for 8 hours. Now, related to all this is that the Russians, who are just called the Russians, because
they're always in it, man.
and they're sort of like this weird rogue element, because EVE Online has this much larger metagame of time zoning, where you actually want to bring in different players who are in different time zones, so that when you go to sleep, and in order to build certain big capital ships, you have to do that out in the open and exposed. So you need people in different time zones to protect that stuff. And so you'll employ, people like the Russians in order to do that.
Wait, so they build coalitions to defend?
Yes.
Wow.
So they end up being sort of this weird rogue element. And they're important for this story because the Russians were the only ones awake when this bill was unpaid. And so they're the first ones to realize that it happened. Now, what most people do is they just go and they would blow it up and they would take over that spot. But they don't do that. And instead, they patiently wait while the team that didn't pay the bill tried to set up their little node that has to go online in 8 hours. They wait almost the full 8 hours. And then they send in a fleet, destroy it, set up their own thing, and then that's when the Goonswarm Alliance, who is part of North America, they're awake. They bring all their guys in, and then they just start squatting on the space. And at that point, the other alliance that had not paid their bill then has to just bring people in to try and grab it back and protect it for 8 hours. Now it gets crazier in that when there's a couple ways that EVE Online tries to compensate for these large-scale battles. And the primary thing they do is to try and, they beef up servers. There's also a form you can fill out that CCP really highly recommends players do so that they can stabilize the servers, is basically you let them know when you're going to attack someone.
Well, they also time dilate too,
awesome.
right?
But then, as Will alluded to, there's time dilation. And in this battle, which I think would have gone on for about 9 hours in real time, was slowed down to like 10%, and thus became like a 21-hour battle as a result. And because of the time dilation, you're running at 1/10 the game speed, which means you have to plan out all your moves far in advance. And it essentially then becomes like this pseudo RTS. And what makes it even crazier as this goes on and stretches into like its 18th and 19th hour is that the other side realizes, hey, we need to get out. This is unwinnable. The math is against us. And the whole reason that the Goonswarm, the Something Awful guys, decided to pull the trigger was because they had spies on the other side that let them know the math worked out for them. So they just brought in everyone and knew that through a war of attrition, they could just wait them out. And when the other side tried to leave, essentially they I forget what the actual term is, but it's basically like these warp bubbles that sticky the ships into space and they can't move. So they're all trying
some kind of interdiction, probably.
Yeah, so they're all trying to warp out, but they've all then launched these warp bubbles to keep their ships in place. They can't leave, and all they're doing is getting pummeled. And at the end of this huge battle, 75 Titan ships were destroyed, which each take a month and a half to build, cost the equivalent of $1,500 US dollars if you were to translate this. And the destruction of a Titan is so monumental in the EVE universe that when one is destroyed, there are headlines on EVE fan sites to say oh my god, a Titan was destroyed. And in this battle alone, yes, 75.
Patrick, I have a very important question with all this. Where was Kite Co. in all of this? Do we know where they were? Do we know which side of the line they were?
They were the
I don't think they were participating. It was tough once it got started to participate because it sort of caps out in terms of who can get involved, especially because of the time dilation. Like if you're just not there, it's gonna be tough to make any sort of impact. But Kaiko is still going. They are still strong in the I don't know about strong, but they're still there.
So what's the upshot here? What happened?
So that's $112,000 worth of Titans. I read it was like 300,000 total assets lost in this thing, though.
Man.
Yeah, tons of stuff. The Titans are those are the equivalent of nukes. So the reason that people spend so much time building those up is because they are so powerful. They take so much time, and a lot of wars get settled or mitigated by just pure math. Like if the team that shows up has 30 Titans and you don't have 30 Titans, then there's not a whole lot of point in the match happening. So for this Goonswarm alliance to take out so many of these Titans, I think the Goonswarm alliance lost 15, but the other side lost like 50 something. When I talked to the guy who didn't pay his bill, he said that essentially set back everything they've done for the last 6 months, and it destroys their entire campaign that they were waging. So
did you see what CCP is going to do about this?
Yeah, they're putting up a memorial.
Yeah, there's going to be like there's going to be like a permanent space plaque installed that commemorates this battle.
Really?
Like a monument.
Like remember the battle.
Monument in space. Yeah.
Wow.
Not only that, but they're apparently going to go and seed the area with like salvageable debris from all those Titans.
Oh, to be like,
but
this
over
is where
time,
a massive battle
to fix the economy.
No. Like people can go get it, but they're not going to dump it all at once. I guess for economic reasons, they're going to kind of dole it out over time. But
EVE is basically the metaverse from Snow Crash, right? Like that's where we're at.
I hope not. Then we're all going to go bananas.
There's no sword fighting, I guess, but
is there pizza?
I'm sure there's pizza.
Patrick, so is this the end? You talked to the guy who forgot what happened. How did he forget to pay his bill?
He went and thought he calls the EVE Online corporate interface a sucking chest wound, which is to say that he is pretty sure it was a glitch, and that they have a process in place where two other members of his corporations are like how players come together.
Sounds like a CEO passing the buck.
And then two other people checked it, and they said it looked fine, but obviously it wasn't. So I mean, it was funny. Like this Mitani character, who we heard all sorts of things about when Drew and I were out there last year. Dude is a notorious shit talker, and some of the stuff he says in my interview, I think they put their dick on the table and we chopped it off, and that's
gross.
Just minor ways that
why
he
would
talks
you put your
about,
dick on the table?
I don't know.
Your dick's on the table right now. There's that big wall of monitors.
I can't see it.
That's why you don't get a table saw.
That's not a wall of monitors. Patrick.